And with that he charged, slashing with the knife. Only a hand rose and casually caught his arm mid-swing, the blade never even coming near suit. He hadn't even seen the bastard move. For the briefest of moments, Mushi's confused eyes met his blank ones. What the fuck? He couldn't have explained what happened next. One moment he was trying to wrench his arm out of Suit's death grip, the next he was spinning through the air and, oh shit, he was rushing towards the floor! He hit it hard, only barely managing to avoid knocking his head against the linoleum. But the impact still sent a fierce jolt through his body, and something around his ribs cracked. Winded and dazed, he watched the fight unfolding before him as if from far away. He could only see a group of people attempting to assault what looked like a black blur, moving almost too fast for his eye to catch. The blur was fending them off with ease, a backhand here, a chop to the neck there. Each blow sent them flying farther than they should, some crashing into shelves of produce to distant, outraged shouts. None of them got up again. A glint of silver in the blur's left hand caught his eye. A knife. His knife. Reality crashed back with a vengeance. How the hell had the bastard taken his knife right out of his hand without him noticing? Were they really being taken down by someone fighting with just one hand? Humiliation and rage coursed through him, motivating him back onto his feet. The girl, he thought violently, struggling to breathe. He had to get to the girl. She'd taken a few steps back when the fight had started and didn't seem able to tear her eyes away. She was clinging to her little cane as though it were all that were holding her up. If he could get to her, take her hostage. He hadn't taken more than a few stumbling steps in her direction before the figure just on the edge of his vision whirled, arm whipping out in one fluid motion. Mushi howled in pain as his own damn knife flew and sank into his leg. He fell, clutching the injury. The mohawked man looked up, holding back tears of pain, to see the rest of his gang lying still on the ground and their would-be victim approaching. Through his blurry vision, those red eyes almost seemed to be glowing. Mizora Mushi had enough time to bitterly reflect on the irony of his situation before the pain in his chest and leg became too much, and the world faded away. Everything had happened so quickly, Chiaki's brain hadn't yet realized the danger had passed. Adrenaline and fear were pumping through her veins, and even though she knew she was safe, the ultimate gamer couldn't stop shaking. She couldn't stop staring at the bodies either. The muggers hadn't even known what hit them, hadn't known what they were up against, and hadn't paid attention to the warning signs. It was like the bandits in that Western game Skyrim, who would attack the player even if they were 20 levels lower. She'd thought it was funny then, giggling and shaking her head with a wry smile at artificial stupidity before obliterating them. This wasn't funny at all. Kamakura had killed 6 people in as many seconds with the ease of making a sandwich. She'd known he had every single talent. Logically, that meant he had skills such as martial arts and blade work. But for the first time, she realized exactly what that meant. For the first time, she realized Kamakura-kun was dangerous. But that wasn't even the most disturbing part. No, what she couldn't understand was why it had seemed so familiar to see him move and disarm someone like that. Why those words, "no miracle will happen," had a sense of déjà vu about them. A sharp pain throbbed behind her eyes, as if her lost memories were pounding against the inside and trying to break free.
Why do I feel like I've seen him attack someone before? But could that...
Nanami, Kamakura-kun stated, appearing before her suddenly. Chiaki jumped, unable to hold back a little gasp. His face was still set in its normal impassive expression, but she had heard the silent inquiry as to her well-being in the single word. That, more than anything else, reassured her. Her racing pulse began to slow.
At the end of the day, he's still Kamakura-kun. He won't hurt me.
She took a deep breath, mentally shook herself, and attempted a smile that came out a grimace.
I'm fine.
She fought very hard to not stare at the bodies. But like magnetism, her eyes slid back towards the prone form of their leader. Chiaki swallowed. She hadn't even noticed him sneaking up on her, worried about Kamakura-kun as she'd been. Kamakura-kun's eyes followed her line of sight. They are not dead. She started, looking back at him wildly.
They aren't? But they're lying so still.
I did not wish to traumatize you more than necessary, so I checked my blows. They are only unconscious. Even their leader's injuries are not fatal. It felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She wouldn't necessarily say they wouldn't have deserved it. They had attacked first, but she was still relieved. She'd had enough of death. Chiaki tossed the unconscious muggers another hesitant glance.
Should we call a hospital or something?
Kamakura-kun had already turned away, picking up the bags he'd set down at the start of the confrontation. No, leave them.
But
The hospitals are too overworked to assist everyone. If they're fortunate, they'll wake up robbed completely blind. If they aren't, they won't wake at all. Either way, their fates are of no concern to us. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Maybe she should have pushed harder to get help, to do the right thing, but right now, she just wanted to go home. Home? When had she started thinking of that isolated place as home? They quietly resumed walking.
People scrambled to get out of their path as if they carried the plague, staring at Kamakura-kun with fearful eyes.
Even the clerks, who had started to yell angrily when he sent those men into the produce shelves, were quiet, backing away and ducking their heads. Chiaki still couldn't believe they'd been attacked, just like that, out in the open. Muggings were only supposed to occur at night, or at least in dark alleys, not at the entrance to a store with people standing around and watching. It was only when she'd tried to catch the attention of the lingering bystanders and seen them turn and hurry away as soon as they met her gaze that she understood why. The world was every man and woman for themselves now. No one would step in to help strangers, even ones being attacked right in front of them. Perhaps some had even been hoping to take whatever the muggers left. Already she could see a few flocking around their attackers' still bodies, vultures ready to pick apart the still living corpses. The reality of it was much starker in that moment, and she suddenly needed something familiar to cling to. Hesitantly, she reached for Kamakura-kun's hand. He looked at their joined fingers blankly, and Chiaki wondered if she'd been too assuming. Saying Kamakura-kun wasn't a touchy-feely person was like saying the world had had an accident. He got the feeling he didn't even know what ordinary human contact was. But he didn't pull away, and he slowed his pace to match hers. They made the trip back to their mountainside house in silence. That night, she dreamed they were back at the store, but instead of the gangsters, it was her classmates cornering them. The knife Kamakura-kun took morphed into a gun, and he shot them one by one before turning it on her. When he pulled the trigger, she fell backwards into a maze. Traps sprung out at her, and she ran as a woman laughed. That night she remembered, and she woke up screaming. End of chapter 8. Author's note. A single yen is approximately equal to 0.0085 US dollars. So 400 yen is about $3.55. Economics are admittedly not my thing, so the price inflation probably isn't consistent. If any of you happen to be economic experts and spot mistakes, let me know.